And unfortunately, I wasn't able to have a midwife. I was high risk. So I had an MD, and he wasn't with me the whole time. He came in to do the delivery, and he would leave. And I knew then that there's got to be a different way.
Yeah, you were saying you've never missed a birth.
Yeah, I don't miss births. I missed one, 9/11. I couldn't get back into the city at all.
That's it? That's the only one you
That's the
ever
only
missed?
one I missed. That baby's head is coming down, down, down.
Okay.
And eventually that pressure will just stay. But I'd like to know about that before you do your little squat thing. Women come to me all the time that have had births in a traditional OBGYN setting, and it is a totally different experience, and they spread the word. But unfortunately, it's just not enough to turn this around for us.
You go in. We're going to 28th and 8th, please. Can I tell you something? It is so hard to find this birth stuff.
Really?
Oh my God, it like
Is
doesn't
the researcher
exist.
still doing stuff or no?
Yeah. That was like the Twilight Sleep cribs.
Looks like a torture chamber.
And look at what they did to them. It was like a straitjacket.
Oh my
Look at that. They like blindfolded them.
What year is this?
This is in the 20s.
The drug scopolamine was invented in Germany in the early 1900s, and American women found out about it. Remember that at that time, women were still being told that the pain of childbirth was the curse of Eve, and that it was because of Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden that women had to suffer during childbirth. So you can imagine how the modern liberated feminist attitude at the time would be, I certainly do not have to suffer. And if there are drugs around that keep me from having to suffer, then I'm going to go find those drugs because I'm a modern woman. Women thought that it took away pain during childbirth, but it doesn't. It actually just takes away your memory of the experience. So scopolamine spread rapidly across the United States, and by the 1960s, almost everyone was having twilight sleep. Now, it does take away memory, but it also takes away self-control. It takes away self-awareness. So women screamed and tried to climb the walls and spit in people's faces and tried to claw the face of the doctor or the nurse. So the hospitals developed a technique of strapping women to the hospital bed with lamb's wool, because if you used anything else, it would leave marks on their wrists, and then their husbands would want to know what was done to them. And so women were literally strapped to beds and left there for days, sometimes in their own poop and pee. It was a very brutal period in American birthing history.
If you look at obstetrics for the last 50 years, what do you find? In the 1930s, they were giving x-rays on every pregnant woman to measure her pelvis. And then in the 1940s, they discovered that that caused the baby to have cancer. So they had to stop it. And then in the 1950s and 60s, they had another drug called thalidomide, which caused babies to be born without arms and legs. And then they had to stop that. But you see, in every case, it was after the fact. In the 1990s, they were giving Cytotec to induce labor in women who had had a previous cesarean. And they ended up with hundreds and hundreds of ruptured uteruses and many, many, many dead babies before they found out, finally, in 1999, that they shouldn't do that. But you see, there's not a good history in obstetric practice of careful study of the long-term effects of all these interventions. This is why, if you really want a humanized birth, the best thing to do is to get the hell out of the hospital.
I think about you, think about love.
Historically, the home birth movement grew apace again after it was basically cut out from under the midwives at the turn of the century during the hippie era, when there were communes. And the communes mimicked, in many ways, kind of immigration communities. They mimicked, extended families. And so midwives were reborn, in a sense, during that era.
We wanted the choices. We didn't want somebody else making the rules.
that didn't understand us, that thought we were machines instead of people with feelings, because we knew that feelings affected birth.
That was part of what sparked the natural childbirth movement, was a reaction against the abuses of the scopolamine era, the twilight sleep era, because some people realized the only way to get away from that was to get out of the hospital altogether. Just as we were getting someplace, technology caught up to us again. The electronic field monitor got introduced into hospitals starting in 1970, and by the end of the 70s it was pervasive in hospital birth, and the cesarean rate in that decade went from 4% to 23%.
See, when I started, only 5% of women in the U.S. had cesarean. 10 years passed and it was up to about 1 woman in 4. I couldn't believe it. And we didn't, in our group, didn't need the first cesarean until birth number 187. So we were going the other way from the rest of the country, and we were doing that safely.
Here comes another one. Good.
So that told me something about the pelvis of the American woman is just quite fine, thank you very much. And we didn't have another C-section until birth 324.
The number of American women giving birth by cesarean section is at an all-time high.
These days, a record number of moms are giving birth by cesarean section.
Cesarean sections have now become the most common major surgical procedure performed on women.
As we all know, the cesarean section rate in this country is going up, up, up. Why? What is really, really underneath this? Cesarean is extremely doctor-friendly, because instead of having a woman in labor for an average of 12 hours, 7 days a week, it's 20 minutes, and I'll be home for dinner.
There was a study that came out many years ago which showed that the C-section, if you looked over a 24-hour period, the peaks in C-sections were 4 in the afternoon and 10 o'clock at night. So it's obvious that the 4 in the afternoon is, you know, it's late in the day, I don't know what's going on here, you know, I want to get out of here. And the 10 o'clock at night is, I don't want to be up all night.
Some doctors have taken advantage of patients' interest in cesarean and put it on the table as an option. And certainly it makes the obstetrician's life potentially much less complicated.
We focused on, you know, the metropolitan New York area. And as bad as the Manhattan rates were, for instance, in Suffolk County, they've got at least 2 hospitals that are over a 40% rate. Westchester has one that's close to 45%. You know, I mean, these are huge, crazy numbers. And it's just amazing, and the public doesn't know about it.
The underlying problem is, unfortunately, litigation.
There was a doctor who trained me who used to say, they can never fault you if you just section them, just section them.
There's definitely a standard that at the end of the day, if you did the C-section, you did everything that you could to get the baby out. So the C-section may be done faster.
And that's pretty much the current thinking, it seems like, in obstetrics is like, oh, we might get sued, so let's just do C-sections on everybody.
It's a growing crisis.
Somebody clearly is going to have to step in and stop the trend, or else we're going to get to 100%.
Pick a date, write it on your calendar, have a baby.
And the fact that it's sort of a statusy thing, you know, at the cocktail party to say, oh, I just had an elective C-section. As long as, you know, an elective C-section is like having a Prada bag, then that'll drive it also.
This whole concept of women being too posh to push is a fairly recent phenomenon. You could attribute it to Victoria Spice, the posh Spice Girl who has had 3 C-sections around her husband's soccer schedule. Britney Spears has had 2. The list goes on. I think if celebrities who did have home births, who used midwives, spoke up about it more, we would have a more balanced picture. If Angelina Jolie had had a water birth in Africa, I think that more women would have been clamoring for water births. I really do.
Women have gotten so accustomed to plastic surgery in this country. I mean, 18-year-olds are going in and having all kinds of things done because, again, that's where this country's going. So Whereas in 1990, the thought of a doctor, you know, doing surgery on you was, oh my God. Now, women are having so much